Welcome to the Steps in Purpose podcast with Edie Ann. This podcast explores emotional awareness, faith, and purposeful living through short, reflective conversations designed to help you notice where you are and take your next step with clarity. Thanks for being here. Have you ever stopped and wondered who you'd be if you quit repeating the same story about yourself over and over again? That question can reach really deep because the story we tell ourselves about ourselves is often the story we believe and then play out in our lives. If I kept telling myself I'm the one who always gets overlooked, I'm going to start seeing life through that lens. If I keep telling myself I always mess things up, I'll start expecting that from myself. If I keep telling myself people always leave, nothing ever works, I'm too much, I'm not enough, I'm too late, I missed my chance, then little by little, that story starts shaping how I think, how I react, how I trust, how I show up, and what I believe is possible for me. That's why this matters so much, because the story does not just give life to your words. It starts living in your patterns. I think about someone who keeps saying, I'm just the kind of person who struggles. At first, that might feel honest. Maybe life really has been hard. Maybe they've been disappointed more times than they can count. Maybe that sentence grew out of real pain. But after a while, that story starts becoming a script. It starts deciding what they expect from life before life even unfolds. It starts shaping how they walk into relationships, how they walk into an opportunity, risks, and healing, right? They may want something different, yet they keep rehearsing the same identity every day. And that's where this gets powerful, because most of us are living much more from our deeper internal programming than we realize. A simple way to understand this is your conscious mind is the part you're aware of in the moment, right? It's the part that notices. It's the part that chooses. It thinks through things and takes in new ideas, right? It's the information getter. Then there is the deeper automatic part of the mind where habits are formed, emotional patterns are created, learned beliefs are made, and repeated responses get stored and replayed. That deeper layer is shaping far more of your everyday life than most people realize. People often say it like this: about 10% of our daily life feels conscious, like you're conscious of it, and intentional, while a much larger part runs through automatic patterns we've repeated so often they feel normal, right? It used to be said that 90% of our unconscious brain is used and 10% of our conscious brain is used. I don't know how factual that is anymore because I think we're smart people. We've probably changed that over time, but it's not about only using 10% of your brain. Your whole brain is active in different ways. It's just simply a helpful way to understand that a small part of what guides your day is actually fully conscious, right? While a much bigger part runs through learned patterns outside of that direct awareness, right? You don't think about breathing. You don't think about moving your hand when you're talking. You don't think about blinking. You don't think about walking when you're doing those things. That's just all unconscious actions that your body does for you, right? You don't think about pumping blood, right? So all of that stuff is happening without your conscious awareness. That means if you keep feeding yourself the same story, your life will keep following the path that story has laid down, right? Because it's in your direct awareness. And honestly, I think we all do this to some extent, right? In some area of our life. We repeat stories about our worth, our timing, our relationships, our abilities, our future, our body, our voice, our healing, our past, and even our connection with God, right? We say things like, this is just how I am. This is how it's always going to be for me. People like me don't get this kind of life. I'll probably always struggle with this. And after a while, those thoughts stop feeling like thoughts. They actually start feeling like facts when they're not. And, if you've been following me for some time, this is where the emotion gauge becomes super helpful, because every level carries its own storytelling. Disengaged tells a flat story. There's really not a lot of storytelling happening there. Survival tells a pressured story. Victim tells a powerless story. Frustration tells an irritated and reactive story. Hopeful starts telling a more open story. Empowered is going to start taking responsibility for the next thought, right? The next choice and the next step. Aligned tells the truth with peace. And joyful tells a story rooted in freedom and presence and trust. So if you want to know where you are in the gauge, listen to the story you keep repeating. It's usually a pretty good tell on you. If your inner story sounds like nothing ever changes, nobody gets me, this always happens to me, I have to do everything myself, I'm exhausted, I'm behind, I'm stuck, then that story is revealing the emotional lens you're living through, okay? And if that story has been repeated long enough, your deeper mind begins treating it like a familiar roadmap, like it's truth. So that is why changing your life often starts with changing your story. The story you tell yourself about yourself. The story you tell yourself about yourself is the story that we believe and we play out in our lives. And I don't mean pretending. I don't mean tossing pretty words out on top of real pain, okay? I mean getting honest about the story you've been rehearsing and asking whether it's still telling the truth about who you are today. Sometimes the story was born in a season that really did hurt, right? And sometimes it helped explain what you were doing or what you were going through. Yet seasons change, healing happens, awareness grows, and what once described your pain can start limiting your future when you keep dragging it with you. I think that it's such an important thing to notice because a lot of us are still introducing ourselves through an old wound, right? We're still speaking from an old disappointment. We're still letting an old chapter narrate a current season, and we're still repeating something that may have been truer in a lower level on the emotion gauge, while God is inviting us into a different one. Maybe the story has been, I always get hurt. Maybe it has been, I have to carry everything alone. Maybe it's been, I'm hard to love. Maybe it's been, I never finish what I start. Maybe it's been, I missed my chance. Yet, what if those are not identity statements at all? What if they are simply repeated conclusions that your mind got used to rehearsing? This is where the question comes in, okay? Who would you be without the story you keep repeating? Who would you be if you stopped introducing yourself through the hardest thing that you lived through? Who would you be if you stopped expecting your future to answer to your past? Who would you be if you began choosing a story that actually agrees with truth, healing, growth, and possibility? It doesn't mean life becomes easy overnight. Listen, it means the direction starts changing. It means your mind begins receiving a different message. It means your deeper patterns begin hearing something new, often enough that a new path can start forming. And that is why the story matters so much. The story you repeat becomes the lens you look through, The lens becomes the pattern you live from, and the pattern becomes the life you keep creating. So make it a good one. Make it true. Make it life-giving. Make it spacious enough for growth. And make it honest above where you've been and hopeful about where God can still lead you, right? Because maybe you are not the person the old story says you are. Maybe you are simply someone who has repeated that story so many times it started sounding like home. And the beautiful thing is, homes can change. Stories can change. Patterns can change. People can change. But it all starts with awareness. It starts with listening. It starts with catching the sentence you say most often and asking yourself, is this the truth? Or is this just a script I've been running? Such a powerful place to begin. Maybe you start noticing your words this week. Maybe you catch the phrases you use when you're tired. Maybe you ask yourself what story you've been shaping your choices around lately. And maybe you begin replacing that story with one that is more honest, more hopeful, and more aligned with who you are wanting to become. Because the story we tell ourselves about ourselves is the story we believe and then play out in life. So make it a good one, right? So today I want to leave you with this question. Who would you be without the story you keep repeating? If this spoke to you and you want more tools like this to help you understand where you are and how to shift your story, I want you to go over to my website at edieanne.com. That's EDIEANNE.com. And I want you to understand something. Your next step really matters. Thanks for spending this time with me. Until next time, keep stepping in purpose.